to Justice Quest.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Justice Quest. My name is Tom O'Neill, and I will be your host today again. This is a talk show where we go ahead and we'll take your comments. So go ahead and if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the comments. We'll read them online. This is a talk show where I unabashedly call for the execution of all traitors to the United States of America. And I do that not lightly, but because we've been forced to do it. For 40 years now, I've been watching the gradual decline of our country. And right now is coming to a head. And what we're going to be doing today is covering, we all know what's happening in Dearborn, Michigan. For those of you who don't pay attention, I guess Jake Lang was gone ahead and hauled out of a police car and stoned by 3 Muslims, and nobody was arrested at the time. But apparently now there's 3 people have been arrested. So increasingly, illegal aliens and Muslims are given control of our streets. You know what? And this is not going to last forever. There are several, and I mean hundreds of points we're going to be covering, but let's get into the history a little bit first. We're going to go ahead and go all the way back to the Crusades. I've got a couple of important points here, so I will point them out when I do it, but let's go ahead and get back. The Crusades were a series of military campaigns launched by the papacy, that's the Catholic Church, between 1095 and 1291 against Muslim rulers for the recovery and defense of the Holy Land as part of a wider crusading movement. The First Crusade was proclaimed by Pope Urban II, I knew an Urban, at the Council of Clermont in November of 1095. A call to arms for Christians to reconquer Jerusalem from the Muslims with promises of spiritual reward. Okay. So that's what kicked it all off. All right. We all heard, in my history class, we learned about the Crusades, just as that was read there, but there were atrocities committed by both sides. They went ahead and started targeting atheists as you will go ahead and accept Jesus Christ your Savior or die. Nope, and that's what they did. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, people. And I can't go ahead and destroy or go ahead and tell you that enough. Whatever they come up with and they say it's a good idea or it's for the children or blah, 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 it usually isn't. Hillary Clinton's, when her husband was president, the big thing was, we have to do it for the children. Yeah, well, that got old real quick. All right. Let's see. Nearly 470 years passed from the time that the Muslims began to crusade against Christian lands until Christians responded with the First Crusade beginning August 15, 1096. It should be known that originally Christians did not conquer these lands with the sword, but with life-changing influence of the gospel of Jesus Christ. During the lifetime of Muhammad, Islam began a bloody campaign of conquest that has continued to the present era. All right, so basically what happened is Christianity was spreading throughout the world, the Middle East, and Muhammad come along and said, nope, we're going to stop this, and that's just another point I want to make is Satan wants to destroy God's work however he can. He will raise up somebody that says that they're a prophet and get people to follow him. And that's what we have today. So I want to go ahead and make that's the first important point I want to make out. Satan wants to destroy God's work. Yeah. We are a Christian nation. I'm not going to say were. Barack Obama said we're now a Muslim nation. I disagree with that. And with my protest, howls of protest long on that one, I crawled up my senators, congressmen, everything else, and I told him he recast that, and he never did. All right. The Christian Crusades were attempted by Christians to save other Christian nations from the sword and dominance of Islam. It is a historical fact that sometimes Christian crusaders became opportunistic and even pillaged other Christians. But the original intent of the Crusades was to take back what Islam had taken from Christianity. The following is a brief summary of the Muslim and Christian Crusades. You know, when I first Googled this, I want to go ahead and stop right there and say that the first 4 or 5 things were the Muslim perspective on the Crusades. Yeah, that's not what I'm looking for. I had to scroll down a little bit to go ahead and find out what the Crusades were all about. Muhammad began the Crusades, Muslim brutality towards Christians prior to and following the conquest of Jerusalem. Aggression against Christian Jews was commonplace. As Islam increased its grip on the Middle East and the Mediterranean world, brutality against Christians also increased. As Islam increases grip on the Middle East and the Mediterranean world, brutality against Christians also increased, as the following quote demonstrates. Early in the 8th century, 60 Christian pilgrims to the Holy Land from Amorim were crucified by Muslims. Around the same time, the Muslim governor of Caesarea seized a group of pilgrims from Iconium and had them all executed as spies. Yeah, whatever excuse works. They were going and visiting the Holy Land, and call them spies. Brutal subordination and violence became rules of the day for or against Christians in the Holy Land. In 772, the Caliph al-Mansur ordered the hands of Christians and Jews in Jerusalem be stamped with a distinctive symbol. Conversions to Christianity were dealt with particularly harshly. Conversions to Christianity, again, there's a war by Satan on Christianity, all right? Dealt with Christianity. Conversions to Christianity were dealt with particularly harshly. In 789, Muslim beheaded a Christian monk who had converted from Islam and plundered the Bethany monastery of St. Theodosius, killing many more monks. So anyway, we go on and on and on. The Crusades were a series of things, but and most of them failed, and the reason is simple. I mean, I could take a look at it from a military point of view. Is your Crusades are starting in Europe, and you're traveling all the way. That's an awful long supply line. Food, water, munitions, arrows, swords. You can only carry about 2 weeks worth of stuff on your back. But the one I want to go ahead and highlight is the 5th Crusade. It was called the Children's Crusade. It happened in 1212. The chief motivators were Nicholas and Stephen. Conquest of the Holy Land by those whose heart who were pure in heart. Now, they were not yet in their teens. In other words, they were about 10, 12 years old. And this is called the most pathetic crusade is the Children's Crusade of 1212. Stephen and Nicholas, not yet in their teens, believed that the purity of their lives would provide success where the adults had failed. Children from France and Germany marched across Europe to Italy. Most of the children were lost at sea, sold into slavery, or slaughtered. Yeah, so you have to be trained in war, all right? You just can't go ahead and say, oh, God's going to protect me, all right? You have to do something yourself. That was kind of, Really. Oh boy. I gotta admit they had guts, let's see. Let's see. All the Muslims did was contributed to society, to the world, was the placeholder zero. And it took Europe 200 years to go ahead and recognize the concept or understand the concept. But where, instead of writing M for 1,000, it was like 1000. And zero was just a placeholder to see where you're at. And that's we're all familiar with it today. But back in the day, Muslims were the ones that invented it. But that's not the only thing they did. All right, let's go ahead and go on about this some more. All right. By the time the Crusades had started in 1099, invading Muslims' armies had slaughtered countless thousands of Christians in the Levant, the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy. A full 90% of Christian territory had been unjustly invaded and annexed, and under the lash of their peaceful Muslim overlords, Christians were enslaved, raped, forced to pay the extortionist tax known as the jizya, forced to convert to their peaceful religion, and summarily executed for no other reason than they were Christians. In a formerly Christian country unjustly taken over by the Muslims. Again, that's Satan declaring war on what God has started. In fact, Muslims had controlled Spain and Portugal for 400 years before the Catholic Church came to realize that Muslims not only wanted, now this is important, wanted Christian lands and wealth, but also wanted to enslave and destroy Christian souls. Who does that? Satan. I know the scripture is not against flesh and blood that we wrestle, but against principalities. That is a graphic example right there, people. You cannot go ahead and ignore that. You can go on, and we can go on. We're going to go on and on and on. The evil perpetrated by Muslims spurred a Christian revival with Muslim-occupied Spain and Portugal. However, by AD 850, the Cordoba-based government met this Christian resistance with a horrific pogrom. But despite the terror unleashed against the Christians, very few converted to Islam. Yeah. In 850, Muslims arrested a Catholic priest named Perfectus and accused him of insulting Muhammad and subsequently murdered him. St. Perfectus's murder resulted not only in violent riots, but rather widespread displays of Christian nonviolence or non-cooperations. Christians took to the main plaza of Cordoba and denounced Islam and its founder Muhammad, pointing out that the religion wasn't based in peacefulness. Yeah, does that sound familiar? Many of these Christian clerics, we're going to cover this in detail later on in the show. Muslim apostates, repentant Christians who had converted to Islam and then reverted back to Christianity were arrested and tortured, but the nonviolent protests continued through 852. Let's see. Christian pacifists gained momentum. Church leaders faced with the out-of-control nonviolent revolt in Cordoba and a fiercely violent one in Toledo. Fiercely violent. And then Toledo called for a council of Cordoba to end the confrontation. In December 852, the council honored the fallen as martyrs, but called on Christians to avoid any more confrontations that would result in their deaths. Isn't that what the left is telling us? Don't do anything. Let's not cause a scene. Let's not do anything. Let's let them have their way. Yeah, that's what it is. the Muslims have formed a collusion with the Democratic Party in America. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit. So it goes on and on and on. We've covered the list of genocides, cultural genocide, ethnic cleansing under Islam. We might go through that again today. Let's see. Because naturally, any sensible person cannot stand humiliation and servility. Thus, by this Muslim scholar's own admission, Islam is not open to the possibility of humility and humble service to others. These aren't virtues extolled by Islam, since no sensible person would practice them. The very two virtues Christ demands of his followers. Islam and Christianity have little in common other than their monotheism, and Islam is certainly the cause of many wars. Christianity isn't. Islam is certainly the cause of many wars. Christianity isn't. Yeah. People, we've got to realize that something is, all we got to do is take a look at what's going on in Europe, what's going on around the world. The Chinese have gone ahead and started demolishing mosques, and turning them into chicken farms and whatever, that they want, that they have a need for it. That's one thing that the Chinese are doing right. The Philippines also have gone ahead and started targeting Muslims, and Indonesia too is starting to target Muslims. It's about time we start doing the same thing here in the United States. Get them the hell out. I don't care if they're peaceful for now, all right, but if we don't nip this in the bud, it's going to continue going on and on and on. We will be going ahead and having to deal with this for the next 4 or 5 generations until finally somebody with enough stones like Donald Trump comes up and says, okay, we're going to get rid of them all. Barack Obama brought them into this country. He can send them back. And if we want to go ahead and take a look at history, we can go ahead and take a look at the Barbary Pirates. Thomas Jefferson went ahead and became the president of the United States in 1801 or something like that. And what happened was, well, I got a whole bunch of stuff here, but Thomas Jefferson advocated for a strong naval response to the Barbary pirates while emphasizing that war was a necessary evil to protect American commerce and citizens. Now, let me go ahead. Thomas Jefferson and I go ahead and agree on war. It is the biggest waste of men and material known to man. How many tons of steel have gone ahead and ended up at the bottom of the ocean? We could have done. Now, the military, I served 20 years in the military. Yeah, it's necessary. And I was prepared to do my part and go to war. Although, you know what? A strong offense is better than a weak defense. On the necessity of war against the Barbary states, Thomas Jefferson wrote to President Adams from France. Adams was the president at the time. I should prefer the obtaining of it by war. We ought not to fight them at all unless we determine to fight them forever. Money is their God and Muhammad is their prophet. It rests with Congress to decide between war, tribute, and ransom as a means of reestablishing our Mediterranean commerce. We ought to begin a naval power if we mean to carry on our own commerce. This highlights his belief that military action was essential to protect American trade and assert national sovereignty. Of course it is. In his first annual message to Congress on December 8, 1801, this is important. We're getting into the history of our confrontation with Islam since the founding of our country. In his first annual message to Congress on December 18, 1801, Jefferson stated, Tripoli, the least considerable of the Barbary states, has come forward, demands unfounded either in right or in compact, and have permitted itself to denounce war on our failure to comply before a given day. The style of the demand admitted but one answer. I sent a small squadron of frigates to the Mediterranean with assurances to that power of our sincere desire to remain in peace, but with orders to protect our commerce against a threatened attack. This demonstrates Jefferson's careful balance between diplomacy and military readiness. All right, and this is on the broader philosophy of war. Jefferson famously remarked, much as I abhor war and view it as the greatest scourge of mankind, as I do, and anxiously wish to keep out of the broils of Europe, I would yet go with my brethren into these rather than separate from them. While he personally disliked war, he recognized a necessary tool to defend national interests, including during the First Barbary War. The Barbary States were already at war with America, and they seemed to understand only one kind of diplomacy. That kind was accompanied by a cannon. Yeah, bad guys only understand one thing, right here, the noose. Right? If you don't go ahead and punish criminals, if you don't go ahead and punish dictators, if you don't go ahead and punish the evil of mankind, all right, then it's only going to go ahead and increase it, encourage it. And this is what we have. Today's scripture, Psalm 37, 12 and 13. The wicked plot against the righteous, but the Lord laughs at them, knowing that their time is short. All right. In 1801, Jefferson authorized the deployment of a U.S. naval fleet to the Mediterranean, marking the beginning of the First Barbary War, 1801 to 1805. The fleet, commanded by Commodore Richard Dale, and including officers such as Stephen Decatur and William Bainbridge, engaged in blockades and bombardments of Tripoli's ports. Notably, the USS Philadelphia ran aground, was captured, but American forces later destroyed his ship to prevent its use by the pirates. These actions demonstrate that the United States would defend its interests without paying tribute. All right. But it goes on. The rise of the Barbary pirates. The Barbary pirates, or corsairs as they were often known, became a major force off the coast of North Africa during the 16th century as semi-independent provinces of the Ottoman Empire. Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, and later independent Morocco. The North African coastal powers were built on twin resources of plunder and tribute, with corsairs being armed, financed, and encouraged by their rulers. All right, so raiding and piracy were officially licensed. All the Barbary states considered raiding an official enterprise of the state and were within their rights, according to Islamic law, to do so when at war with non-Muslim states. Yeah, in other words, if it's a non-Muslim state, take them. Yeah, do what you want with them, you know. European states lacked a unified naval force and were often distracted by their land wars. As a result, most preferred paying tribute rather than entering into prolonged naval wars. Policy that Barbary leaders openly encouraged. This tribute took the form of annual bribes, the gift of ships or local leaders to their representatives, and other extravagant gifts to the rulers of the Barbary states in return for peaceful passage of European ships. Spain, France, and Britain, the Dutch Republic, and others all paid tribute in this manner to avoid conflict, indirectly financing the corsairs. Yeah. Wow. So, and this goes on and on. The first corsairs focused on tribute payments, which Europeans had long used to buy peace from the corsairs. In 1796, the United States paid $40,000 and agreed to regular tribute to the Tripolitan leader. That's Tripoli, in exchange for a non-aggression treaty. The U.S. also reached tribute agreements with Algiers and Tunis, agreeing to provide ship supplies and gifts to the three regimes. It gets worse. Jefferson, who was minister to France in the 1780s, has opposed the use of tribute as both dishonorable and as an impractical drain on the government's budget. He believed that the longer, $40,000, try 39 trillion. And an impractical drain on the government's budget. He believed that the longer we pay tribute, the more it will be expected. Yeah. Jefferson was outvoted by Adams and other advocates for appeasement who argued that it was better to pay for peace rather than risk bloodshed. The U.S. continued its appeasement policy for the rest of the 1790s, even as pirates preyed on American shipping and U.S. captives languished in slavery. So, in other words, they didn't hold up to their agreement. All right, we were paying tribute, but the Barbary pirates were saying, all right, let's go take them as booty. Yeah. American public outrage at pirate attacks increased, and Congress began spending ransom money to free captives. In 1795, Congress set aside nearly $1 million to free American prisoners in Algiers and pay for ongoing protection. By the end of the decade, over 100 American captives had been released in this way. But as the problem was papered over, it was not solved. And by 1799, the Barbary states were ratcheting up their demands on the U.S. If you don't stop it, it will get worse. When you have illegal money, look at what happened in the Philippines when we were paying for Subic Bay and Clark Air Force Base. The rents kept going up and up and up, and it was the graft going on in the Philippines was unbelievable. You got that free money, supposedly free money, and everybody wanted a piece of it. So anyway, but the problem was getting worse, and Jefferson went ahead and stepped up to the podium and said, "This stops now. We are going to go ahead and take charge here." In early 1801, shortly after Jefferson's inauguration, the Pasha of Tripoli, Yusuf Karamanli, demanded an increase in tribute from the United States. Jefferson said, ain't going to happen. And Tripoli responded by declaring war on the United States. Really? Back then it might have been, because we were pretty much broke. We were still recovering from the Revolutionary War. We were still a young nation. So we haven't gone ahead and we definitely didn't have the naval power we've got now. Let's see, so they declared war on the United States on May 14th in 1801. The decision by Tripoli to go to war with the United States was an extraordinary and shocking one. America was a young nation. This was the first time it had been engaged in a declared conflict with a foreign power overseas. Jefferson did not back down. Instead of acquiescing to the demands or sending more diplomats with bags of gold, he ordered a squadron of U.S. Navy ships to the Mediterranean. This was a historic moment in United States foreign policy. It was the first time the United States had used its military might to defend its rights and interests abroad. It was also the first time the United States had taken military action beyond its own borders. Let's see. Jefferson's decision was a clear message to both allies and adversaries that the United States was a power to be reckoned with. All right, the Barbary conflict would become the proving grounds from this new approach to foreign policy, with the United States using its naval power to project influence and protect its interests from across the world. An interesting fact about this was that the Marines aboard the naval vessels were issued leather gauntlets to put around their necks to prevent them from getting beheaded by the Barbary pirates, all right, in battle. So that's why today they're still called leathernecks, In fact, the formal Marine uniform still has that high collar, if I remember right. All right, and we actually fought two Barbary wars. First one was 1801 to 1805, Okay. And let's see, we won that one. Yusuf's army was defeated in the field and was forced to negotiate. Tripoli was now in the hands, was now at the end of their rope, and the American Navy preying on their shores. No revenue from piracy and another rebellion to fear. Tripoli sued for peace in June 1805. The Treaty of Peace and Amity between the United States and America and the Regency of Tripoli ended the war, released American prisoners, and set no further tribute. The United States paid a ransom to end the war, but did so while keeping its pride and policy intact. It was a win for Jefferson. Oh, yeah. But do you think they keep their word? No. There was a second Barbary War in 1815. I'll bet you didn't know that. Yeah, I'm enjoying my new coffee cup, the Justice Quest coffee cup. Yep, that's it. That's the thing. We're going to be putting it on our website here soon, so y'all can go ahead and do it. We've yet to set a price or get some other things finalized here, but you'll be able to go ahead and buy them here shortly. All right. The Second Barbary War. The Second Barbary War in 1815. Come on. You don't negotiate with Muslims because they're going to break it every time. You don't make a treaty with the bad guys because they will break it every time. Look at what happened in the Vietnam War. We launched Operation Linebacker 1 and 2. It drove the North Vietnamese to the peace table. All right. All that did was give them time to rearm, re-equip, and start their funny business all over again. All right. And, you know, Vietnam War is a story for another time, but this is what it is you go ahead and you do a complete and decisive victory. All right. So you're not going ahead and doing this. We went ahead, Norman Schwarzkopf told George W. Bush, we better go in there and take care of Saddam Hussein because we will be back here again. All right. Sure enough, we were. And only a few 10 years later, 12 years later, I was over there, yeah, when we were going over to Saudi Arabia twice a year or every year and a half or something like that. But, you know, and that was before all this nonsense started up. A resurgence in North African piracy came during the War of 1812. Once again, when the Barbary States, when the United States was at war with the British, when the Barbary States, especially Algiers, once again preyed on American merchant shipping. All right. And they did it again, you know. Oh, boy. Get rid of Islam. Kill them all. Get rid of them. End of story. We never learn our lesson. We show mercy. No, we've shown enough mercy. We've shown enough goodwill. We've shown enough that we've gone ahead and been the nice guys long enough. It's about time we end this. Let's see. President James Madison, fresh from his election victory, ordered a powerful squadron of ships into the Mediterranean to restore order. The new American president, flushed with a hard-won second term, gave command of the 10 warships to Commodore Stephen Decatur, the newly minted hero of the First Barbary War. The squadron was to be the most potent force ever sent to the sea by the United States and put an end to piracy and tribute payments once and for all. In less than a month, Decatur's ships had captured Algerian ships and placed the Dey of Algiers under siege. Yeah. Let's see. Stephen Decatur, with a show of force from his squadron, concluded a treaty with Algiers on very favorable terms to the United States. It demanded the release of all American captives, a payment of compensation for lost ships, permanent end to tribute payments. The similar treaties were quickly arranged with Tunis and Tripoli. The war lasted less than 2 months, but it would have permanent effects both at home and abroad. Let's see, the Barbary states would never again threaten American shipping, and other European nations that had previously paid tribute would follow the American example. We were becoming a leader way back then. Second Barbary War ended the end of state-sponsored piracy in the Mediterranean and demonstrated the United States had become a world-class naval power. Yeah. Took us a while to do it, but we did it. Okay. Now, we're going to go ahead and go through a few of the genocides committed by Islam. Mongol converts to Islam, Delhi, India. In 1298, 15 to 30,000 were killed. Coptic Christians, Egypt, 1300s to 1517. The Mamluks destroyed most of the churches and killed an estimated 300 Copts over the 13th century. Maronites and Greek Orthodox Christians, 1300s. These communities were expelled and their settlements were destroyed. Are you seeing a pattern here against Christians? In 1632, the victims were the Portuguese, India. Perpetrators were Shah Jahan, 1632. When negotiating with Portuguese merchants broke down, Shah Jahan massacred their men and enslaved 4,000 women and children. Yeah. It goes on and on and on. It's been going on since 630, 640. What's the 600s? All right, first one is 647 onwards. 642, 9th century, 700, 720, 10, 13, yeah, about 642. You know, they have not changed. We go ahead and we can look at Bridget Gabriel's Act for America. I ran across her back in about the year 2000, and I started watching her. And they were holding Muslim American rallies in Florida, all over the United States, actually. And when the regular press disappears, then they come out and they say, we're here to invade America. All right, end of story. This has been going on for the last 26 years. And we have to go ahead and do it. Now, let's go ahead and see what's going on in Dearborn. Abdul El Sayed, likely nominated first socialist communist for United States Senate in Michigan. All right, United States Senate, another Muslim communist. Yeah, there's still a law in the books that says communists shall not go ahead and run for the United States, an office in the United States. Let's see, Hassan Piker has said that he will destroy the white race in America. How much more do you people need? We need to get rid of these people. In Dearborn City itself, we go ahead and they are turning a blind eye to what the Muslims are doing. So they are in cahoots with them. Here's a solution right here for both the Democrats and their Muslim buddies. Right here. Take them out and hang them. They are working against the United States. They are allowing an invader into the United States. And it started with Barack Obama. And even before that, but Barack Obama went ahead and opened the floodgates for them. while turning a blind eye to the Christians in the Middle East that were getting slaughtered. I don't know about you, but it just goes ahead and makes my blood boil to see what people are doing to my country that God has founded. God gave us this country so that we may be a shining beacon on a hill to the rest of the world that says, see what we could do when we have Christ as our head. And it all started with Woodrow Wilson, who signed the Federal Reserve Act. Yeah. In fact, you know what? Lincoln was killed because in order to fund the war, he printed up greenbacks instead of going ahead and going to the Rothschilds for a loan to fight the Civil War. He was killed for that reason. I just found out recently. Kennedy was shot because he refused to get off the gold standard. Nixon did it, of course, eventually, 10 years later, 11 years later, And hence we're sitting here with $39 trillion in debt. Other countries are sitting there looking for, making plans for when America fails. When, not if, but when. Keep your powder dry, people. Dearborn City Council, Jake Lang stoned by Muslim police. The Dearborn City Police Department chief told everyone to stay inside their home. Will not do anything, giving the Muslims free reign. All right, guys, I've watched him give his press release. He's telling them, don't go ahead and cause, let's go ahead and get rid of the Muslims. They're here to invade. No, we're not going to do that. He's probably under orders from the city council. But still, if he goes along with it, I would have told him to go pound sand. You want to fire me, that's your privilege. But then I would have taken up arms and gone ahead and started putting him on a plane and getting him out of this country. Then they're chanting death to America right there on Dearborn City streets. What more? How much more clearer can you get? The Democratic Party is sitting there saying that we're going to use the Muslims to go ahead and take over the United States. Yeah. They're partnering up with the Muslims, and many Muslims have gone on TV and said that we're partnering with the Democrats because Democrats are stupid. How much more can you get when your own allies call you stupid? They won't go ahead and partner with the right because we stand for something. We stand for God. We stand for what's right. We stand for a right and a wrong. And this is what we have to pay attention to, people. God gave us this country. He went ahead and he formed it out of 13 disparate countries or colonies. Packed us out of the wilderness. Expanded this land from shore to shore. And the Democratic Party has been getting stupider and stupider since the 1960s. John F. Kennedy was the last Democrat that I would have voted for. Then we come to the heart of the matter. Barack Hussein Obama. Hussein, how come that? When the Democrats and Republicans got together, one of the agreements that they made was, you will not use my middle name, Hussein. All right, because that would have been putting a Muslim in office. And basically we did that. Years after 9/11, we elected Barack Hussein Obama, who went ahead and declared famously, this is no longer a Christian nation, this is a Muslim nation, and the Muslims have a rich heritage in the United States. No, they had nothing to do with it. In fact, they were at war with the United States way back when at the beginning, as we just read. Thomas Jefferson, and what was the other one, Monroe? Yeah, and they kept coming back. And finally, we had to go in there and get rid of it. Oh man, it makes my head explode. And now there's going to be a protest to the city council at Dearborn, Michigan. And they're going to be speaking out against the Muslims. Muslim men are raping our young girls, along with illegal aliens. But you know what? They're not doing anything about that either. You know, the only one doing anything about it is Trump, right? And the Democrats are fighting them every step of the way. Why? Because votes. It comes down to that. They're fighting the SAVE Act because if we require an ID to vote, then they're never going to be in power again, ever. I don't see why they're in power now. We went to war because they wanted to hold on to slavery. All right, we started a civil war over it. And Southern Democrats went ahead and fought us every step of the way. We went ahead and Lincoln went in and said, you're going to get 40 acres and a mule. Democrats stopped that. Democrats come up with Jim Crow laws, preventing blacks from voting. They opposed the Civil Rights Act in the 60s. How many more examples do you need? The Democrats have been against America from the beginning. Democrats are stupid. Yeah. You're the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah. That should tell you something right there. You know, in all this time, you know, we've got Americans praying for our country. You know, it's about time we realize that God is not going to do it. If we go to war, all right, and we go ahead and start another civil war over this issue of Muslims and liberal ideas and the Democrats and everything evil that's going on in the world, all right, God will help us, but we have to do something first. I looked to the Revolutionary War. When I read the history of the Revolutionary War, I can point to 3 times that God has gone ahead and saved the Revolutionary Army. One was by a fog bank, another one was by a hurricane, the other one was a run of shad. The Continental Army was starving in Virginia, and a run of shad ran uphill. Yeah. The Civil War in the Andersonville, they prayed to God that they go ahead and he provided them with fresh water because they were dying of dysentery and dirty water and everything else. And that night, lightning bolt come down, struck the ground, and fresh water started pouring out of the ground. And they named that spring Providence Spring. You know, and I'm going to go ahead and say it again. I'll say it again, that anybody that goes ahead, yeah, the Democrats are also going ahead and, here's a good point, are going ahead and are declaring the war against Iran and the fact that we're taking out their nuclear facilities, but yet they're wanting to take away our guns. Yeah, it's about time we get some men with some stones that stand up for America. In fact, I might run for office again. I'm not quite sure. But I firmly believe that's coming down to that. You know, if you're in political office in the next three years, I firmly believe you're going to find yourself up against a firing squad in front of a wall, you know, regardless of what your affiliation is, Republican or Democrat. You better have some pretty strong points on your side to go ahead and avoid getting shot. I think the American people are getting fed up. I know I am. In our own local community, I'm watching the Muslims very carefully. I'm going to go ahead and take care of that problem when it arises. All right. Well, we just about come to our end of our show. It's 11:50 right now. So with that, we provided a lot of history, what's going on with the Muslims, and we've covered this subject before, but we have to go ahead and cover it again. All right, and we will cover it again and again and again until there's no more Muslims left in America. All right, if you are a adherent to Islam, you get out. Get out. We embrace immigrants from other countries, but not immigrants that want to go ahead and take over the United States. As Islam has gone ahead and done throughout history, they have gone ahead and stolen from them. They want to go ahead and conquer, just like they did with the Barbary pirates. They want to go ahead and pillage and plunder, and that's it. They don't want to work for what they got. They want to take it. Why do you think they want to drive Israel into the sea? Because Israel built a garden in the middle of the desert, and they want to go ahead and take over that land. They didn't work for it. And you can go to any other state and give them Saudi Arabia, for example, and go ahead and give a small piece of land to the Palestinians so they can form their own, but they won't do it because they know they're a bunch of thugs. Yeah, here it is. In fact, Muslims had control of Spain and Portugal for 400 years before the Catholic Church came to realize that Muslims not only wanted Christian lands and wealth, but also wanted to enslave and destroy Christian souls. Yeah, I got that. Mark is important, and I read it during the show. Yeah, they just want to steal. They want to take what they didn't work for. That is not the American way. We are a very industrious people. We work for what we have. You know what? And we've got people on Facebook that are saying that, I don't think I ought to work, yeah, you want to live, you want to eat, you want to work. In fact, God's word is very clear on that. If you don't work, you don't eat. End of story. And that's what we have. We have a complete lack of God's word in this country, and we have to go ahead and get back to our spiritual roots. Because if we don't, we're going to be sunk. So, again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Tom O'Neill, and I am sick and tired of being polite. I am sick and tired of being reasonable. I am sick and tired of going ahead and talking. All right? Time for action. As I've put on this board before, every time we go ahead and make a compromise with the left, we move our position more to the left. It's a net victory for the evil in this country. There's no more compromise now. We've got the land in the sand. All right, let's stick to it. All right. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tom O'Neill. Go ahead and go to our website, justicequestlive.com, and hit that like, follow, and donate button. And we are here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. 3 days a week. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll say, have a good day, everybody in the Lord, and fear not, for God is in control. Thank you.